The season is less than a week away, and our college football season preview section debuts on Sunday. So let's get things started on the latest edition of the Bedlam Nation Conversation presented by Dodge. Hello, I'm sports editor Mike Sherman. Joining me today are OU beat writer Jake Trotter, OSU beat writer Scott Wright, and today we're going to talk about some of the issues, the big issues with both teams headed in the final stretch of the preseason. Scott, let's start with you. You wrote in Wednesday's editions of the Oklahoman about the importance of the pass rush to the Oklahoma State Cowboys. How critical is that piece to the defense and just the overall success of the Cowboys this year?
It's extremely important because last year they had no pass rush whatsoever from the front four. Puts a lot of pressure on your secondary, and if your linebackers get pulled into coverage, puts a lot of pressure on those guys. That's why you saw big numbers put up against the Cowboys in the past. They were one of the worst teams, not only in the Big 12, but in the country in pass defense. So being able to get some pressure up front is going to really enable them to hang on to their coverage better in the back end and make things a little bit easier for those guys.
Well, the games we'll remember that is the Texas Tech game where they couldn't get off the field. Statistically, the Cowboys ranked 11th in opponents' first downs in the Big 12. Not good. Yet in this conference, the trend is to go to the spread. Teams taking those quick drops and getting the ball out where you really don't have much time to get to the quarterback. So how does that figure in, and who on the defensive line is going to help?
Well, the spread offense makes the front four pass rush even more important because it allows you to keep as many guys as possible in coverage and keep all the wide receivers covered. As far as who it's going to be, that's another big key for Oklahoma State because they've got some added depth on the defensive line for the first time in a while. The front four are really solid. They're four starters: Derek Bird and Ugo Chinasa at the defensive ends, Tonga Tea and Jure Chatham at the defensive tackles. All those guys are pretty solid. Now they've got a few guys behind them: Shetty Jones, Jeremiah Price, a junior college transfer, who are both good pass rush defensive ends. Swanson Miller, another junior college guy. A really big guy, 6'4", 300 pounds in the middle there that'll be able to plug some holes and get a little bit of pass rush too.
Strength in numbers for the Cowboy. Thanks, Scott. We'll be back to talk about OU, but first a word from Dodge. We're back with the Bedlam Nation Conversation presented by Dodge. We're with OU beat writer Jake Trotter. Jake, all week long we've been running a series, Stoops at 10, sort of looking at and commemorating Bob Stoops' 10 years with OU. As you look at it, what has been his biggest impact?
I think his biggest impact has been on the athletic department budget at Oklahoma. You look at what their budget was in 1998. They were $15 million in debt. They weren't turning a profit. And their overall budget was $25 million. You look at it today, $70 million is the athletic budget. They paid the debt down to $4.2 million. And they're one of the few nations in the country one of the few institutions in the country that they turn a profit. So when you look at what impact he's had on the university, everybody likes the wins and losses, but the economy has been a big part of Oklahoma being able to do a lot of other things in their athletic department other than football.
That surprised me. So many athletic departments are in the red. OU is not. Is it as simple as saying, if you win, they'll come?
It's not necessarily as simple as that. There are a lot of teams that win. Bowling Green, there was an example the professor at Transylvania, Dan Folks, gave of Bowling Green that went like 9-0 over the course of the season, and then their 10th game, they had a big rival come into town, and they couldn't sell 15,000 tickets. So it's not as easy as wins and losses, but the combination of building excitement, getting people in the seats, builds to having a winning athletic department in terms of budgetary lines.
We've got 3 more parts of that series coming up today, or in the Oklahoman. Tomorrow on News OK. Tomorrow morning we're going to write about sort of the loyalty Stoops has for his assistants and vice versa. Tell me about that.
Well, one of the things I asked a lot of the assistant coaches, why do they like working here? One of the things they said is Coach Stoops really fosters a balance between family and work. They allow the kids to come up to the athletic department or the Switzer Center and hang out. They have family night every Wednesday night throughout the season. And that's not the same way in a lot of schools in college football. So I think a lot of the assistants appreciate that. And one of the reasons they can be patient and look for the right head coaching jobs down the line.
And then coming on Saturday, we have a story about sort of a side of Bob that not a lot of people get to see.
Well, you look at impact. What is impact? And I think economy obviously was a big one, but maybe the biggest impact Bob has had since he's come to Oklahoma is the work he's done with children who are afflicted in the area, children who are sick. Bob has had a big impact on a lot of their lives, and it'll be interesting to see what John Helsley, the other OU beat writer, writes in Saturday's paper.
And coming Sunday, Barry Trammell's going to look at sort of, is there a second act for Bob? What do you think?
Well, he said over the summer he wants to coach junior high basketball. I don't see that because I think he's a football guy. But it'll be interesting to see what he does. He's been here 10 years. Can you believe it? It doesn't seem like he's been here that long. But when you look at other coaches in the Big 12, he and Mac Brown are the most tenured coaches. So I think he'll stay here for a while. I don't see him coaching anywhere else in college football, and I don't see him going to the NFL. So I think as long as he stays in coaching, he'll be at OU. Now, if he wants to do something else, maybe get into to TV broadcasting or whatever that may be, business, I don't know. But I think as far as a coach, he'll be at OU for a long time.
Thanks, Jake. When we come back, we're going to debate dirty jobs in college football. But first, another word from Dodge. And we're back with the Bedlam Nation conversation. This is our point-counterpoint segment. In the football section, which comes out Sunday in the Oklahoman, our theme is dirty jobs. My question for the two of you on this debate, what is really the dirtiest job in college football? Jake, you're a former college football quarterback and a high school quarterback. Is it the quarterback position?
No way. Offensive line is the dirtiest job in college football. Get no glory, first of all. If DeMarco Murray runs for a touchdown, he made a great move. If the quarterback gets sacked, it's the offensive line's fault. And on top of that, you get beat up pretty good in practice and in games. Lots of cuts, lots of bruises, lots of eye gouging and all different kinds of shenanigans. So it's a tough job being on the offensive line.
Are the rules, do they benefit the offensive line or defensive line more these days?
I would say that probably benefit the defensive line. I mean, holding seems to be an up-and-coming penalty, and everybody holds almost on every play, but if you can almost call it on every down. But I think offensive line, it gets tougher and tougher because it's also, too, these defensive linemen are getting so fast that trying to block around the corner is becoming more challenging.
Scott, your dirtiest job?
It's hard to argue with the offensive line, but I've got two that I've kind of lean toward. One, the deep snapper, because nobody notices what you do unless you screw up. And two, I go with the defensive tackle because I think that it's the only reason I go with that over the offensive line is because the offensive lineman has a job to go knock you down, and you're trying to get away from him, and you usually end up getting double teamed or getting driven into the ground somehow, some way. So I think that the defensive tackle position is a little bit dirtier than the offensive one.
And depending on how a team plays, a lot of times the defensive tackles are just blockers for the linebackers, right?
Right.
They're trying to take up 2 and 3 guys. It's a little sweaty in there. Hey, listen, thanks, guys. We'll be back to wrap things up with predictions after this message from Dodge. And we're back with the final segment of the Bedlam Nation conversation presented by Dodge, and it's prediction time. In the football section, we asked each of you which games on the schedule has the best chance or the most chance to dirty up OU or OSU season. So the question is, what are your picks for that game? Scott Wright, you first.
I really think this is a pretty easy one for Oklahoma State. I think that going to Missouri, there's a good chance I think that Oklahoma State is 5-0 when they get to Columbia. Maybe even making an appearance in the top 25. Missouri's going to be pretty fired up to have another top 25 team coming in, and that's going to be a really difficult game for them up there. A team that can throw the ball, run the ball a little bit, do a lot of different things. Some people want to say that Texas is going to be a tough one, but I don't think Texas is going to be as good as many people think.
That's high hopes, though. That means a win over A&M, and you're rolling in there 5-0. How about it for you, Jake? What's the game?
Scott gave me the perfect segue. Texas is going to be good. Now, maybe they're not going to be national championship good, but people are not talking about Texas this year, and I think they like that. And that's always going to be the toughest game for OU. Neutral site. When you look at their schedule, they're going to be favored by at least 7 points in every game this year, with the exception of maybe Texas, which they'll probably be favored 6 points in. So I think that's going to be the toughest game for OU, as it is every year.
I'm going to go with the OSU game in Stillwater. I think OU might be undefeated going into that game. That wraps it up for this week's edition of the Bedlam Nation Conversation presented by Dodge. Next week, it's game time. Be sure and follow college football with the best coverage in the nation, powered by NewsOK.com, NewsOK TV, and the coverage team for the Oklahoman.